Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the economy mains topic discussion from GS paper 3. See, now that your prelims is over, it is time for you to jump into the mains discussion, mains preparation. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to discuss one mains topic from the syllabus from GS paper 3. And the topic that I have chosen is mobilization of resources. In this video, I am going to dissect this topic of mobilization of resources into multiple subtopics, and we'll pick one subtopic and we'll discuss that subtopic in 360 degrees dimension. And after that, we are going to discuss one mains question, one previous year mains question, and also one practice mains question. Okay. See, mobilization of resources topic is very important for mains. Questions have been asked on this topic multiple times. Okay. So let's start with mobilization of resources. So I'm going to break down this topic of mobilization of resources into multiple subtopics which are important for mains, as I told you. So what is mobilization of resources? See, mobilization of resources refers to channelizing the savings for sake of capital formation so that it kickstarts the economic growth in a country. In fact, for economic growth of any country, mobilization of financial resources is the first and foremost aspect that is required. See, broadly, these financial resources are actually mobilized by two entities, either private sector entities or public sector entity like government. When I said private sector entities, I meant household sector. Second, financial institutions, that means banks, mutual funds, etc. Right? And third, corporates, that means the business organizations. So these are the three private sector entities which mobilize the financial resources for sake of capital formation or for sake of investment in an economy. Okay. So if we get into the issues faced by all these three stakeholders while mobilizing the resources, we'll end up gathering certain topics which are important for mains. So let me write down the challenges or the important issues faced by them. The first and foremost issue is low savings rate in Indian economy. Low savings rate and low capital formation in Indian economy. This is very important topic. Why? Because, see, in the recent past, we have seen declining savings rate in India. Right now, as per 2022-23 stats, savings rate is around 30% of the GDP. 30% of GDP. In fact, it used to be 36% of the GDP a decade back. So this savings rate has been declining over a decade, and this is clearly being reflected in the total capital formation. That means the total investment that is being done in an economy. It is around 33% of the GDP right now, and it used to be earlier 39% of the GDP. Okay. So this is very important, and also in the last 1 year there have been many number of articles in the newspapers regarding this declining savings rate in Indian economy. So this topic is going to be very important for this year mains. And other challenges faced by the private sector for mobilization of resources, it lies with the banking sector issues. That means even banks also provide or mobilize the resources. Okay, that means they attract the deposits, and that those deposits are channelized into investments through loans or through investments in any other assets. So banking sector and other financial institutions play a very significant role in mobilization of the resources. So what are the problems faced by the banking sector? These issues become very important for mains. Like, what are the issues faced by the banking with respect to the non-performing assets? What are the other issues which are impacting the health of the banking sector? And what steps have been taken by the government? These steps are going to be very important for mains. For example, government has come up with a bad bank, or National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited, NARCL. This is very important. No question has been asked on this topic. Okay. So question can be asked on what is NARCL, what is its significance, and what are its limitations in improving the health of the banking sector, and what suggestions or what measures are supposed to be taken to improve the health of this or efficiency of the NARCL. So this is one probable topic. And Other topic is IBC framework. So why is IBC framework important in this topic? See, government had introduced insolvency bankruptcy code framework in 2016 with an initiation of resolving the stressed assets of the banking sector, so that those resources which are locked in a default company can be utilized to give investment to other companies. So IBC framework is also very important for mobilization of the resources. So a question can be asked in IBC framework. As such, there has never been a question on this topic. So question can be asked on what is IBC framework, what is its significance, and what was the success of IBC framework in the last 7 years, and what are the pending issues. See, this topic was also mentioned in this year economic survey, so a question can be expected on it. So this is going to be the second topic here. And also other important topic is developmental financial institutions. Developmental financial institutions are developmental banks, DFIs. Example, NABFID. Few years back, 2-3 years back, government had introduced NABFID, National Bank for Infrastructure Development. So the idea of this developmental financial institutions is to mobilize the resources for a specific purpose like infrastructure development. So this is not a new initiative. Independent India had already established multiple developmental financial institutions. So a question can be asked on India's experience with respect to the developmental banks, and what were the success and what were the failures of these developmental banks, and what measures are supposed to be taken to improve the performance of these developmental banks, so that financial resources can be efficiently mobilized by these financial institutions for a specific objective of the economy. Right? So these are probable topics under this banking sector issues topic. Okay. Next, problems faced by the corporates for mobilizing the resources. Most of the corporate companies are facing challenges in attracting the investors for their bond market. So corporate debt market challenges is a specific topic which is very important for mains. Corporate debt market issues. This year economic survey has specifically talked about this corporate debt market issues. Why the corporate debt market is very shallow. What are the reasons, and what steps are supposed to be taken to widen and to deepen the corporate debt market. So basically these are the topics which are important for mains under this topic of mobilization of resources. Now let's do the same exercise for the government sector as well. See, how does the government mobilize its resources, and what are the challenges faced by the government while mobilizing its resources? All these topics may be probable topics for mains. Okay. Now let me tell you how government mobilizes its resources. Government mobilizes its resources through two channels, either tax resources or non-tax resources. So let's talk about tax resources. So what are the issues faced by the government under tax resources issue? One thing, the low tax GDP ratio in India. Low tax to GDP ratio is a very significant issue faced by Indian economy. In India, the overall tax to GDP ratio is around 11%. It is 11 to 12% of the GDP, which is very less. Okay, which is very less. This ratio is 11 to 12%. So how to improve? What are the reasons for this low tax to GDP ratio? And what are the consequences of this low tax to GDP ratio, and what steps are supposed to be taken by the government to improve the tax base of the economy to improve the tax to GDP ratio? This is one important topic for mains. And second, in India, the share of direct taxes is much higher. Share of direct taxes is actually comparatively lower when compared to other advanced economies. So the share of direct taxes to the overall tax revenue is around 55% in India. However, this number may seem high from Indian perspective, but it is very low when it is compared with other advanced economies like OECD economies. In advanced economies, the share of direct tax is about 80%, 75% of the total tax revenues. So low share of direct taxes. This is also a very important topic. What are the reasons for the low share of direct taxes? And what are the negative consequences of having low share of direct taxes in the overall tax revenues? And what steps have already been taken by the government to improve the direct tax and other direct tax reforms? All these points are supposed to be studied to answer any question on this topic of low share of direct tax. So these are the two topics. And also GST. GST is also one tax related topic which is very important for mains. Already questions have been asked on GST twice. So a question can also be asked in the future. So what are the pending issues with respect to the GST implementation? There are certain issues with respect to the GST implementation. What are the pending issues and what steps are supposed to be taken to improve the efficiency of the GST framework? So a question on this topic can be very well asked. Okay, so these are the important topics under tax resources. And other source of government mobilization of resources for the government is non-tax resources. Non-tax resources. What are the non-tax resources? Example, disinvestment. Disinvestment. This is again a very important topic. What is disinvestment? What is strategic disinvestment? And what are the advantages of disinvestment? And what are the challenges or concerns associated with disinvestment? And what is the plan of the government with respect to the disinvestment? All these topics are supposed to be studied. And asset monetization. Asset monetization is also very important topic. In the recent past, government has been depending upon monetization of its core assets, so that it can generate some revenues or it can mobilize certain revenues or resources, financial resources to invest in the infrastructure projects. So this is very, very important for this year. A question has not been asked till now. So this question can be asked. And also National Monetization Plan, NMP. This can also be asked. Okay. Basically, these are the important topics. All these are the important topics under mobilization of resources. So once you dissect each and every syllabus topic into multiple subtopics, then half of your job is done. You will have a very streamlined preparation for mains, right? Okay. So now let's start with savings rate. We'll start with this topic of savings rate. And we'll discuss everything about the savings rate, all the topics under savings rate, and we'll solve two questions, one previous year question and also one mains question. This is very important. As I told you, savings rate has been declining in India, which is being also reflected in its investment of India. Now, these are the previous year questions which are asked from this savings rate topic. Among several factors for India's potential growth, savings rate is the most effective one. Do you agree? What are the other factors available for growth potential? This is a question which was asked in 2017. And there was another question which was asked in 2020. Explain the meaning of investment in an economy in terms of capital formation. Discuss the factors to be considered while designing a concession agreement between a public entity and a private entity. This was asked in 2020 for 15 marks. Okay. So we'll solve one of these two questions and also one practice question. So let's start with savings and capital formation. Okay. See, for any economy, in order to achieve a specific economic growth, what is required is investment. That means how much of investment is made in an economy, that is going to determine how much of economic growth it is going to be witnessed. Okay. However, the investment depends upon the savings rate. So only when savings rate increases, these savings can be mobilized and channelized for investment or the capital formation. What is capital formation? That means investing money or spending to acquire new buildings, new infrastructure projects, new equipments, new tools, improving the skills and improving new technology. Okay. For that reason, we need investment, and this investment comes from savings. Okay. So how much of savings is necessary? So for that, we need to understand where the savings are going to come from. See, the savings rate, the savings that are undertaken or made in an economy is determined or measured by this measure, gross domestic savings. Gross domestic savings refers to the total amount of savings made by an economy in a particular year. That means out of the total income, that means out of the national disposable income, if you subtract the consumption expenditure, whatever that is left out, that is considered as gross domestic savings. That means out of the total income, if you remove the consumption expenditure, the expenditure made for the day-to-day consumption, whatever that is left is savings. And this savings, this national savings comes from three entities or three stakeholders: households, private sector and government, in the same order. See, household sector contributes to around 60% of the total savings. 60% of the total savings in an economy, in Indian economy, followed by private sector and government sector. Private sector and government sector together make the rest of the 40% of the savings. In fact, private sector is around 40 to 45, 43, and government sector savings are almost negligible, and also sometimes it is negative because it borrows, it doesn't have any savings. In fact, it borrows from the market. So the biggest contributor to the global gross domestic savings is household sector. So what is household savings then? Household savings refers to the total amount of money that is left after each and every household meets its consumption expenditure out of its total income. Whatever the money that is left is considered as savings. So where do they channelize these savings? That means, how do they keep their savings? They keep their savings either in the form of cash or in the form of physical assets. What are physical assets? Physical assets like housing, real estate properties. That means households may channelize their savings into real estate properties like purchasing a plot of land or constructing a house. So this is one way of channelizing their savings. And second is financial savings. That means they invest in the deposits of a bank. That means they deposit their money in a bank. So bank deposits in bank, or they invest in a mutual funds, shares, bonds, right, or insurance or pension funds. Okay, so these are the various financial assets where they keep their savings, right? And if not, they also invest in ornaments like gold and silver. Why do they invest in gold? Why can't they invest in physical assets or financial assets? So there are two reasons why households tend to invest in gold, especially from rural areas. First and foremost, this gold and silver, these kind of metals have cultural significance in Indian society, which means, gold is purchased on auspicious occasions, and also gold based ornaments are also exchanged as gifts in Indian society. So for that reason, they have strong appetite for this yellow metal. Apart from that, the reason why most of the households prefer investing in gold is they are not assured of good rate of returns on these financial assets. That means when you invest in a bank deposit, if the bank deposit is actually giving you 7% of interest rate, but the inflation is 7%, you're not getting anything out of it. So the real interest rate here in this case is 0. That is why people often tend to invest in physical assets like gold. The small investments, if they have big investments, they invest in properties. If they have small savings, they invest in gold over these financial savings. So these are the three components in which the savings are channelized into from the household sector. Okay. See, why are we discussing about household savings? There is a reason why we are discussing about household savings is because of this. In the last 1 year, there have been numerous articles in the newspapers with respect to this declining household savings. This is a very cause of concern to Indian economy. Why? Because, see, as I told you, the savings component, the household sector contributes to around 60% of the total gross savings in Indian economy. In fact, this used to be 84% in 2000, but it reduced to only 60% in 2023. That means in the last decade, there has been decline of around 20% from 84% to 60%. Right? So this is a cause of concern. Okay. In fact, household savings have plummeted to 5-year low in financial year 2023, and this is also a cause of concern. And also, especially this aspect, the financial savings aspect, here the household sector has seen the sharpest decline. That means in the financial year 2023, the financial savings component has declined to almost 5% of the GDP, which is a 50-year low mark. That means it has hit so low that it has touched the 50-year low mark. So this is a cause of concern. So why are we so worried about declining household savings? To understand that, you need to understand its significance. Why household savings is very important for Indian economy. So let's discuss about the significance of household savings, and then we'll understand the reasons for the decline and also the consequences of such decline. Okay, and then we'll answer a question on it. First and foremost, the most important aspect of household savings is that it is going to enable India to switch to invest-led economic growth model. That means it is going to drive India on investment-driven growth model. Investment-driven growth model. To understand what is investment-driven growth model, you need to understand the existing consumption-driven growth model that is being followed in India. See, I'll explain you what is it. See, in any country, aggregate demand for goods and services that are produced in an economy comes from 4 components. I said aggregate demand. What is aggregate demand? The demand for goods and services that are produced in the economy comes from 4 components. First and foremost, private consumption. That means the household consumption. Second is investment made by the private sector. Third, government expenditure. That means government consumption expenditure. Fourth, demand coming from the global markets, not from the domestic market, but from the global market. So the demand coming in the form of exports. So these are the 4 components of the aggregate demand. These 4 components determine the total output of an economy, which is GDP of an economy. Right? This is true for all the economies. But what is unique in India's case is that this portion is very predominant in India's case. That means most of the demand in Indian economy is coming from household consumption. So in fact, household consumption is driving the GDP growth of Indian economy. Let me show you the predominance of consumption-driven economy in India. See, in India's case, look at the India's case. Private consumption is providing 60% of the demand for GDP. That means 60% of the GDP is contributing from 60% of the GDP is coming from private consumption. Investment is contributing only 30% of the total GDP or total aggregate demand in an economy. So India is predominantly a consumption driven economy, unlike China, which is an investment driven economy. And that is why China could witness double digit growth for a long time, for more than a decade. So the rapid growth that China experienced in the last 2 to 3 decades was mostly due to the investment, not due to the consumption. So you must be wondering, what is the problem with consumption driven economy? You need to understand certain limitations of this consumption driven economy. Only then you will understand the insignificance of investment driven economy. See, consumption driven economy generally has low multiplier effect. Low multiplier effect. What is multiplier effect? See, whenever money is spent in an economy, it is going to kickstart a series of multiple rounds of spending, and this successive multiple rounds of spending is considered as multiplier effect. That means if I purchase 100 rupees of worth of goods in the economy, and the shopkeeper going to receive that 100 rupees as income, and that 100 rupees is spent by the shopkeeper for purchasing some other good, which is going to create demand for some other good. So this is how the GDP is going to be expanded through multiplier effect. However, this multiplier effect is much more rapid or much more pronounced in investment spending rather than consumption spending. I'll explain you how in investment spending the multiplier effect is higher. Let's take the case of consumption spending. First of all, let's take the government is actually spending, let's say 100 crores of rupees on food subsidy. Okay, food subsidy is actually a consumption expenditure. That means government is procuring 100 crores worth of food grains from the market, and it is giving it free to the giving for free for poor people. So this 100 crores worth of food grains are procured from whom? From farmers. That means this 100 crores income was actually given to the farmers. Now the farmers are going to use that money to purchase other goods like food, cloth, or medicines, fertilizers, or anything. And once they purchase it, and those who receive that income, they purchase something else. So this is going to create multiple ripple effect in the economy. So 100 crores spent by the Indian government may create a demand for, let's say, 300 crores worth of goods and services in the Indian economy. So the multiplier effect is how much? Into 3. 100 crores spent in the economy may produce or may result in rise of demand for 300 crores for goods and service, 300 crores worth of goods and services in the economy, right? This is the case of consumption expenditure. Now let me compare this with some investment expenditure. If the government spends the same 100 crores on any other investment or any other capital formation, then let's say a highway project. Let's say a highway has been constructed using that 100 crores for a short highway has been constructed, and this 100 crores is going to be utilized or given as income to laborers who are working in the infrastructure project, the engineers, laborers, and also the input suppliers. That means those suppliers who supplied concrete, steel, cement for the construction project. So all the stakeholders involved in the highway construction project receive that 100 crores of income, and they themselves invest consume that money, use that money to procure other goods and services in the market. So it creates a ripple effect, just like in the case of earlier case. But the difference is that this highway is not only creating demand, consumption demand, but also it is going to invest other investments. It is going to attract other investments. See, once highway is constructed, a tangible asset has been created. So this has improved the connectivity for rural areas. So new investment opportunities may come into picture. That means across the highway, along the highway, new businesses may erupt, new industries may be established. That means new investment is coming. So unlike in this first case where the investment spending in the consumption expenditure, spending for consumption expenditure is going to create demand only once, this construction purpose or spending for any capital formation purpose is going to create multiple rounds and multiple times. So that is why this 100 crores may create a demand of, let's say, 600 crores. So the multiplier effect is going to be much higher if you spend the money for investment purpose rather than the consumption purpose. That is the idea. So consumption driven economy has its limitations because it has very low multiplier effect. That means low demand for growth. That means slow growth in economy. Slow growth of economy. That means the economy is growing at least at 5% or 6%, where the potential to grow is around 11% or 12%. So this is the problem. That is why if you want to achieve this goal of becoming $5 trillion economy by 2030, we have to improve our growth to 8% or 9% every year. Okay. If you want to improve your growth rate, we have to improve the multiplier effect. If you want to improve the multiplier effect, we have to channelize our money to savings, not for consumption, right? So that is why household savings or savings rate in an economy is very important. Understand? And the other issue with respect to this consumption driven growth is it tend to be inflationary because there is a demand in the economy, but there is no adequate investment to improve the supply side infrastructure. If the supply side infrastructure is not going to be expanded, the production capacity in Indian economy cannot meet the demand, rising demand. The consumption expenditure is improving, but there is no investment in the infrastructure. So this may lead to inflation. That means there is a demand, but there is no enough supply. So there will be inflation in the economy. And also, where are you going to meet this mismatch of demand and supply? You tend to depend upon the imports. So this consumption driven growth model may often results in import dependency. Okay. And this leads to jobless growth. There will be growth, but there cannot be enough adequate employment opportunities that are being created due to that kind of economic growth. So these are limitations of the consumption driven growth which is being experienced in India. We have to shift to investment driven growth. For that we need savings. So most of the savings are coming from household sector. More than 60% of the total savings is coming from household sector. So we cannot turn a blind eye to the household savings. So that is the significance. Understand? Right. The second significance is it reduces the dependence on foreign capital and foreign borrowings. Foreign capital and borrowings. This is also very important because, see, generally if savings rate in the domestic economy is going to be reduced, the domestic investment sources are going to be reduced. So the only way out is to depend upon the foreign investment for the infrastructure growth or economic growth. See, there is nothing wrong in depending upon the foreign investment, because foreign investment, apart from its capital, it is also going to bring technology, managerial practices and other innovative practices, and it also imbibes or inculcates competition in the Indian economy. Most of the emerging economies, including India, had benefited from the foreign investment in the past, and it is continuing to benefit. It is still receiving foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investments. It is fairly good. However, the foreign investment in the mobilizing the foreign investment into Indian economy in the coming years is going to be a very challenging issue. This is because of the growing geo-economic fragmentation. So you might have heard about this term geo-economic fragmentation, which was actually mentioned by this year economic survey. What is geo-economic fragmentation? Geo-economic fragmentation refers to this rising tendency among the global economies which are making small blocks based on their political alignments. That means politically like-minded countries are coming together and making economic blocks, and they are encouraging trade and investment among those countries. So this is antithetical to the globalization and the multilateralism that was envisaged by the World Trade Organization. So in the era of geo-economic fragmentation, it is going to be very challenging for emerging economies like India to rise the foreign investment in the coming decade. So if you are going to face challenges in rising the foreign investment, the only way out is to improve the domestic investment sources. And the domestic investment sources are going to come from household savings. So robust household savings in Indian economy is going to reduce our dependency on foreign capital. And also we cannot depend upon foreign investment for improving our strategic sectors. What are these strategic sectors? That means those economic sectors which are very important for not only the economic development but also the national sovereignty and security. So this strategic sector includes defense, space, telecommunication, atomic energy and other critical infrastructure. See, if you attract foreign investment into these infrastructure, these kind of strategic sectors, India may end up losing or compromising on its national security and sovereignty down the line. That is the reason in India often we don't attract investments from the Chinese in state and strategic sectors. So if you want to establish that self-reliance in strategic sectors, you have to depend upon domestic investment. So for these two reasons, we have to improve household savings. Household savings is very important to achieve self-reliance in the domestic capital in strategic sectors and reducing dependency on foreign capital. And also foreign borrowings. That means if domestic savings are going to be reduced, then the banking sector may not be able to give loans for a cheaper rate. Then Indian companies may be forced to go to the foreign banks to raise the loans. And this will improve the foreign borrowings, external commercial borrowings, and external debt service obligations are going to be improved. And interest payments going out of the country are going to be increased. This is going to widen the current account deficit down the line. So for this reason, the only way out is to improve the domestic investment sources and improve the domestic savings. Understand? So robust household savings is going to reduce our dependency on foreign capital and external commercial borrowings, thereby insulating India from external geopolitical shocks. Right? And the other advantage is that robust household savings is going to improve the health of the fiscal health of the government. Fiscal health of government. Now, how it is going to improve the health of the government? See, if the domestic savings rate is good enough, people are going to invest in some sort of financial assets like government, bank deposits, or they invest in government bonds. So in either case, government is going to get cheaper credit. That means improving savings is going to enable the government to rise the borrowings at a very cheaper cost. So if the government is able to rise the borrowings at cheaper cost, its borrowing or the debt burden is going to be reduced. That means its revenue deficit and fiscal deficit is going to be reduced, thereby improving its fiscal health. This is very, very important. This is a macroeconomic improvement that is necessary for any economy. So these are the three significances, the utmost significances of these household savings. And that is why declining household savings is a cause of concern from the macroeconomic point of view. Clear? Now, we know that we understood the significance and we know the gravity of the situation. That means how much of dip has been witnessed in the last 2 decades. Now the thing is, what are the reasons for this decline? There must be some reasons, there must be some causes. Okay, we'll discuss about those reasons behind the decline in the household savings. Okay, see, when do you think the savings are going to be declined? Only when your consumption expenditure is going to be increased. The share of consumption expenditure increases, then your share of savings is going to be reduced, right? For example, let's say if an individual is earning 1 lakh rupees per month and his consumption expenditure is 80,000 rupees, so that he will be able to save 20,000 rupees. That means 80% is the consumption expenditure, 20% is the savings. But tomorrow, due to inflation, if the consumption expenditure is going to be increased to 90,000, right? If it is going to be increased to 90,000, then the savings will be left with, the savings are just going to be 10,000 rupees. So savings will be confined to 10% of the total income. So this is the problem. So inflation often increases the consumption expenditure of the households. When the consumption expenditure of the households is increased, they will be left with less amount of the savings. Okay, especially this inflation coming in the form of food inflation due to the weather volatility, weather volatility and market volatility. Often food prices are very fluctuate. Food prices fluctuate in the market. So food inflation and also the fuel inflation. We depend upon imports. We depend upon imports for our energy needs. So any geopolitical conflict will eventually lead to inflation in the Indian economy. In fact, inflation that is witnessed by the India is actually imported inflation. That means it is imported through crude oil in the Indian economy. So this food and fuel inflation has improved the consumption expenditure, thereby reducing the savings. This is one of the significant issue. Okay, significant reason. Second reason is the increasing consumption borrowings. Increasing consumption borrowings. What are these consumption borrowings? See, household sector is under serious debt now. Household sector is under serious debt now because they are taking loans from the market. Why are they taking loans? They are not taking the loans to invest in any physical asset. If they take the loans to invest in any physical asset for capital formation, there is nothing wrong in it. But they are taking loans for the consumption purpose, consumption expenditure. See, it must be very interesting to see this, that in the financial year 23-24, out of the total loans given by all the scheduled commercial banks, 34% of them went into the personal loans, and majority of these loans went to credit card loans. Credit card loans. That means people are actually consuming goods through credit cards by taking loans from the banks. This was possible with the increasing the role of non-banking finance sectors, NBFC sector, and also improving, increasing trends like BNPL, buy now pay later models, and this, with the emergence of these fintech companies, getting loan for the consumer needs has become very easier nowadays. So even to purchase a gadget like mobile phone, laptop, or a bike, people are using their credit card. So the consumption loans have been increased, and this is a very significant, serious concern. See, rising consumer credit causes for concern. See, as per a recent report by the Reserve Bank of India, there is a significant amount of borrowing being done for the purpose of consumption. For the consumption, especially the youngsters are taking credit card loans very, without any due diligence. Even governments, even the banks are also providing these loans very, very, cheaply. So for this reason, increasing the consumption borrowing is going to increase the consumption expenditure. Okay, one thing, they will have to pay the interest rate, and also borrowings. If you remove the borrowings from the savings, you will come up with net financial savings. So the net financial savings have been declined through increasing the consumption borrowings. Okay, next, why household sectors are actually not able to save? This is mostly because of low rate of returns on financial assets. Low rate of returns on financial assets. This is one reason. That means, for example, let's say you are investing in a bank deposit, but the bank deposit is actually hardly giving you a nominal interest rates of 7%. But when the inflation is 7%, you are not getting anything. That means your real rate of return is 0%. That means the real interest rate is 0%, isn't it? That is why households are actually not interested in investing in the bank deposits. Banks are not able to provide a high rate of interest rate because of multiple reasons. One thing, they are already reeling under the pressure of NPS, non-performing assets, and also people with inflation. With inflation, even if they increase the interest rate, that is not going to give them real interest rates. That is not going to give them any real benefit. So that is why people are not investing in the financial assets nowadays. They are going to assets like gold. So when you switch to the investments on gold, even though it looks like it is a saving, but that is an irrelevant saving. That this kind of saving is actually irrelevant for productive purpose. That means investment in the gold is unproductive. If you utilize the same amount of money to invest in any one of these financial assets, this will go into the market for investment purpose. But if you invest in the gold, it is going to be a dead asset, dead investment. It might be good for the investor, but it is not good for the economy as a whole. That is why government want to discourage too much of purchase of gold. So this is also one of the reasons. So investment in physical assets. Increasing investment in gold. This has reduced financial savings. People are switching to gold and it has reduced the financial savings. Financial savings is important for the capital formation, not other savings like gold. Okay. So these are the reasons for declining in the household financial savings, which are very important for the capital formation in the economy. Okay. Now, what are the consequences? Why are you so worried about declining household savings? First and foremost, because of its utmost significance for economic growth. If household savings are going to be reduced, investment going to be reduced. So it may hinder investment. It may hinder investment creation in the economy. That is first reason. So you just have to reverse this significance as consequences. Okay. Second, it increases the dependency on the foreign capital. So this is also another consequence. Increases the dependency on foreign capital. Increasing dependency on foreign capital. Right. Second, other consequence is that, see, what is the problem here? Increasing the consumption. Why household savings are being declined? Because the consumption expenditure is going to be increased because of increased consumption borrowings. Borrowings made by the household sector for consumption purpose, not for the capital purpose. So this is a very significant issue. This may impact the health of the banking sector because most of these consumption loans are uncollateral loans. So there is no demand in the economy. The demand is artificially created by the loans given by the banks. Otherwise, there is no investment in the economy that is going to provide long-term employment opportunities which will improve the income so that the household sector will be able to pay back the loans taken by them from the banks. So there is a high chance that these loans may be defaulted. and this will eventually impact the non-performing asset non-performing asset ratio of these banks. Okay, so this will impact the health of the banking sector by increasing the non-performing assets, because these consumption borrowings are very serious issue. And second thing, if this household savings are going to be reduced, it will be very difficult for the banks to rise the deposits. Then to rise the deposits, they have to give too much of interest rates, high interest rates. That means the cost of funding is going to be very high. So when the cost of funding is going to be very high, they cannot run the banking business. So this will impact the profitability of the banks down the line. So for this stagnating savings growth and increasing consumption borrowings, both of them will eventually impact the health of the banking sector. Impact health of banking sector. Once health of the banking sector is going to be impacted, the whole economy is going to be crumbled. Okay, and with rising investment in the gold, that means when households are turning into gold as a safe investment compared to other financial assets which are important for the capital formation, then it will end up increasing the import of the gold from the foreign countries. So this will improve or enhance, increases gold imports, and increasing imports are going to widen the current account deficiency and also deplete the forex reserves of India. So these are the consequences. These consequences are macroeconomic consequences. It will impact the investment model, it will investment growth, it will impact the banking sector, it will impact the import bill, it will also impact increase the dependence of the foreign capital and make India more vulnerable to the geopolitical issues. So that is the reason why we need to improve household savings. Then the question is, how are you going to improve the household savings? What is the way forward? Okay, this is the question. So that topic is, the way forward is going to be discussed in the answer itself. Let's solve a question based on this topic. This is a practice question. I request every one of you to answer this question. I'm going to show you the sample answer. So look at the question. Household savings in India have been declining steadily. In this context, discuss the implications of this trend and suggest measures to revive household financial savings for sustainable economic growth. See, what is the impact or what is the significance of household sector? And it has been declining steadily. In this context, discuss the implications of this trend and suggest the measures to revive these savings. Okay. How do you introduce this answer? The best way to introduce this answer is to look at this statement that is given in the question. Household savings in India have been declining steadily. So substantiate the statement given in the question. That would be a perfect introduction to the answer. So look at the introduction. First of all, substantiate what is given in the statement. Household savings in India significantly declined from 84% of the total savings in the year 2000 to 60% in 2023. This net, and also that now apart from that, the net household financial savings has hit its lowest point in the 50 years in 2022-23. You have already substantiated what is given in the statement, what is given in the question. Okay. As such, the reasons for this decline has not been explicitly mentioned or asked in the question. So that is why you don't have to write the reasons separately. However, it is worthwhile to mention the reasons very briefly in the introduction itself. Okay, so that it will fetch you that extra 1 mark for the introduction. Okay, so in the introduction, you are supposed to write the reasons very briefly in 2 lines. You don't have to list down all the reasons one by one because it is not explicitly asked in the question. Okay, so this decline in the savings is primarily due to increasing consumption expenditure due to rising inflation, increased consumer borrowings of households, and low interest rates offered by the financial institutions, or the low rate of returns offered by the financial institutions. These are the major reasons for declining household savings. So your introduction is done. You're going to get good marks for this introduction. Now get into the body of the question, body of the answer. Discuss the implications of this trend. That means implications of declining household savings. Implications of declining household savings. First, it impacts economic growth, hindering investment in the capital formation. Second, it increases the dependency on foreign capital. It increases the dependence on the foreign capital. Obviously, as domestic savings are going to dwindle, it is going to, securing foreign investment becomes more challenging in the context of growing geo-economic fragmentation. Right. And second thing, excessive dependence on foreign capital for strategic sectors like defense, telecommunications, space, atomic energy is going to compromise India's national sovereignty. Okay. Next, it is also going to increase the pressure on external balances. Okay. Increased external commercial borrowings in the backdrop of low savings rate in India may increase the external debt servicing obligations, thereby widening the current account deficit. Next, financial sector vulnerabilities are going to be improved because rising consumer lending and also stagnated savings growth is going to impact the profitability of the banking sector. And shifting to unproductive assets like preference for physical gold will exacerbate the trade deficit by improving the gold imports. All these are the implications of declining household savings. Okay, this is the main body of the answer. Now the question is, suggest measures. What measures are you going to suggest? Okay, just write down 4 to 5 measures very briefly. That is more than enough to complete this answer. Okay, the first thing is to control the inflation. Controlling the inflation is very important to reduce the consumption expenditure, so that households are going to be able to make good amount of savings, so that these savings can be mobilized for investment and capital formation in the economy. So controlling inflation. For controlling inflation, the concerted efforts are necessary from both monetary policy and fiscal policy authorities. That means both the government and RBI should come together to control the inflation. Okay, and widening of the social security to contain the consumption expenditure. It is it is very worthwhile to improve and widen the coverage of the social security schemes like Atal Pension Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, Ayushman Bharat, PDS, Narega. If you provide these kind of social security benefits to the population, they will be able to reduce their consumption expenditure. So if they reduce their consumption expenditure, they will be able to save the money. Okay, so this is again very important. And improve financial inclusion. One of the prominent reasons for rural households to channelize their investment into physical assets like gold is because of the lack of financial inclusion. That means one thing, they are not aware of the other investment opportunities because there are no proper adequate banking services or financial services provided by the banks. Had there been proper financial services, had there been proper banking network in the rural areas, it would be very easy to divert the savings of the rural households into financial assets rather than the physical assets like gold. Okay, and also regulate the consumer credit by increasing the risk weightage of credit card loans. This is very important. It is very important to regulate and discourage this consumer credit in the economy. So people are borrowing for the consumption purpose rather than the investment purpose. So RBI can actually increase the risk weightage to the loans given by the banks for consumption purpose. This may actually discourage the banks to give the loan, discourage banks from giving loans for consumption purpose. Okay, so regulation of consumer credit is very important, and rationalizing the GST tax slabs to reduce the consumption expenditure is one more important way. See, now there are multiple tax slabs, so most of the essential and semi-essential goods are placed in the high tax slabs, and that is why the consumption expenditure of the household is being increased. So now it is important to reduce the number of slabs to only 3, one minimum and one maximum rate and one medium rate. So most of the essential goods should be in the minimum rate and other goods in the maximum medium rate, and only exceptional luxurious goods should be placed under the maximum rate. This will reduce the consumption expenditure. Rationalizing the GST tax slabs is also very important to overcome this inverted duty structure, which will reduce the consumption expenditure. So these are all the reasons, or these are all the measures that are supposed to be taken by the government to improve the household savings in the economy. That's it. That's about this answer. Please try answering this question based on the sample answer that I have given just here. You can add more points if you want. You can make the adequate changes that you may feel necessary for the answer. But I request you to start answering this question. Okay. Now, let's answer another question which was asked in 2017. Among several factors for India's potential growth, savings rate is the most effective one. Do you agree? What are the other factors available for growth potential? See, again, this question is also on the same topic. You can easily answer this question. First and foremost, look at the first statement. Among several factors for India's potential growth, savings rate is the most effective one. Okay. So the first part of the answer should concentrate on significance of the savings rate. Significance of savings rate in the economy. So first write down the significance of savings rate in the economy as the first part of the answer. We have already discussed what is the significance of the economy from investment driven growth model, for reducing the dependence upon foreign capital and foreign borrowings, for improving the health of the banking sector, improving the fiscal health of the government. So all these are actually significances of having a robust savings rate in an economy. So the first part is done. Okay. Now look at the second part. What are the other factors available for growth potential? This is important. What are the factors available for growth potential? So savings rate, mobilizing the savings is very important for the capital formation, well and good. However, that is not the end of the discussion. Once the savings are mobilized and the savings are invested for capital formation, the next question that is going to be arised is how well you are using the capital. That means how productively you are using the capital, how efficiently you are using the capital. That is important. So efficient utilization of the capital is the next factor which is going to determine the growth rate of the economy. Efficient utilization of capital. This efficient utilization of the capital is going to be measured by a measure known as incremental capital output ratio. That means how much of new investment is required to improve 1 unit of GDP. 1 unit of GDP. That means if you want to achieve 1% extra growth rate, how much of extra investment are you supposed to invest in the economy? Basically, it is a capital to output ratio, which means how much of capital is required to produce a specific amount of output. Right. Now the question is, what are the factors, like on what factors this productivity of the capital is going to be dependent upon? Okay. The first factor is technology. Improving the technology. If the government invests in research and development of an economy, this will improve the technology base of the economy so that the capital utilization can be reduced. That means with less capital they can produce more output. Okay. So we need technology and research and development. Okay. This is the first factor. And other factor is the structural inefficiencies and the structural bottlenecks in the economy should be addressed. That means the infrastructure bottleneck should be addressed so that the capital can be efficiently utilized. So addressing the structural inefficiencies. So what are the structural inefficiencies? See, I'm just giving you the hints so that you can answer this question by your own. What are the structural inefficiencies? Structural inefficiencies come from multiple aspects. One, land market inefficiencies. In India, purchasing land and acquiring land for any commercial purpose or any industrial purpose is very legally cumbersome process. That means they have to conduct economic impact assessment, social impact assessment, and also they have to take multiple approvals. And the problem is, most of the times, most of the companies find themselves in legal issues because of the poor land record management. Poor land record management is a very significant issue. Poor land record management, right? And also the land that is acquired often cannot be utilized, optimally. Okay. Once the land is acquired for any industrial purpose, they have to go through multiple regulations. This will reduce the efficiency of utilization of the land. See, suboptimal utilization of land. Suboptimal utilization of land is mainly because of multiple reasons. See, if at all, if any industry acquires, let's say, 100 acres of land, that industry can only occupy 60% of the land, that is 60 acres, and the rest of the 40 acres is supposed to be kept vacant. This is for the safety protocol. This is for the this is because of the safety protocols and safety regulations. That means 40% of the land is being utilized. In most of the states, the ground coverage regulations are very stringent and rigid. This is wasting a very scarce resource like land. So rigid ground coverage regulations, that means how much of the ground that needs to be left vacant or left vacant, that is inefficient utilization of capital. And also rigid floor space regulations. Floor space regulations. What are these floor space regulations? See, what are the floor space regulations? That means within a unit of plot, how many floors can be erected? This is going to be, these are also very rigid in most of the Indian states. It is around 1:3, 1:4 or 1:5. That means within a plot of land only 5 floors are going to be erected, not beyond that. So the land for the industries, if they want to expand, there are enough regulations and rigidity with respect to the horizontal expansion and also vertical expansion. So one thing, land related legal issues are there, and second thing, even if you purchase the land, you cannot efficiently utilize it. So this leads to inefficient utilization of the capital. Inefficient utilization of the capital. Most of the money is being wasted there. So if you don't address these structural inefficiencies, the productivity of the capital cannot be improved. Okay, the capital to output ratio cannot be improved. Okay, and the second aspect is labor. The first aspect is labor, second aspect is land. First aspect is land, second aspect is labor, and third aspect is logistics. What is the problem with labor? In India, labor laws are very rigid. Okay, any economy, any company which hires a significant number of employees cannot fire their employees without the permission of the state government. That means it has to take the permission of the state government for retrenchment of its workers. It has to, and also the trade union laws are very rigid. They are more in favor of the trade unions and less in favor of the companies. So these companies have to accept and recognize multiple trade unions in each and every company. See, most of the energies and most of the capital is diverted to meet the demands of the trade unions. So this often leads to the efficient utilization of the capital. They cannot hire and fire the laborers, at a flexibility. And most of the companies do not have flexibility with respect to hiring of contractual laborers. So the rigid labor laws and unskilled labor, skill issues with respect to the labor, unskilled laborers, these are the two reasons these are the two aspects that needs to be addressed if you want to utilize the capital very efficiently. Otherwise, most of the capital can be wasted in the form of these issues. And the third issue is logistics. See, logistics. In India, the cost of logistics is around 18% of the GDP. That means out of the total output in the economy, 18% out of the total value of the output, 18% of the value is going towards, 18% of the cost is going towards logistics. That means transportation, handling of the goods, and maintaining and storaging of these goods. In India, logistics cost is almost 18% of the total GDP, which is the global average is around 8%. Only 8% of the total value of the output is going towards the logistics costs. But in India, logistics costs are very high. This is because of the lack of proper infrastructure, like road infrastructure, rail infrastructure, and also we have dedicated freight corridors, and the existing railway corridor is actually very congested, right? And industrial corridors, economic zones, free, reliable water transport, all these are not there. So this is also one of the reasons why capital may not be used. Most of the amount of the capital is going and unnecessarily being wasted in terms of logistics costs. Okay, so as long as these structural inefficiencies are not going to be addressed, the capital cannot be utilized very efficiently. So these are the other factors. And also ease of doing business policies. ease of doing business is also very important. In India, the problem is to get the approvals to start a business. So there are multiple approvals to take business, environmental clearances, land acquisition itself is a very cumbersome process, and then environmental clearances and 100 other clearances that are required, permission required from the bureaucrats. And also, even if they want to wind up the business, they have to go through a long procedure. Okay, so even if you to start business, to run a business, and also to wind up a business, there are multiple regulatory hurdles. So this is going to impact the ease of doing business. So if the ease of doing business is not going to be improved, the capital cannot be efficiently utilized. Okay, so these are the other factors that are available for growth potential. These are the other factors which impact the economic growth of a country apart from the savings. So mobilize the savings is only half the job done. Second job is actually to efficiently utilize the savings for capital formation, efficiently utilizing the capital for economic growth, that you improving the productivity of the capital through these measures. So these are the factors: technology, structural, addressing the structural inefficiencies, and improving the ease of doing business. Okay, so this is about the answer for the question. Based on the hints, I request you to answer this question, and please answer both these questions, this practice question and this previous year question. Okay, with this we are done with savings and capital formation. In the next class, I'm going to come up with other topics under mobilization of resources, and in a series of videos I'm going to come up with multiple lectures for mains topics. Okay, and in the process you'll also end up solving multiple mains in a previous year questions and also some practice questions. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Thank you very much. We'll meet in the next video.